What would you do if you went out on a tropical vacation when suddenly your magical bunny girl teacher chaperone got beat up by an evil black and white teddy bear who then demanded that you and your friends start killing each other? Yes, it's once more time to visit the Danganronpa series, where such fantastical ideas as animate plushies, mysterious murders, and affording a tropical getaway are treated with a surprisingly believable seriousness. Set 1 year after the first game, I think this is the best of the three main games in the series. The voice acting is great for everyone, the story makes great use of the setting and the characters themselves, and there's a lot of development and depth to the characters and lore, while still having plenty of room for incredible mysteries and revelations. That said, I need to cover something real quick about these two games so far, and generally future videos. I want to take a moment to apologize. In my previous video, I was keeping things vague and nebulous a little bit, because I was a little more concerned about keeping things from being spoiled for people who might want to play the game, because I did want people to try to play the game or see the game for themselves. But even if they did have an interest in it, the issue that comes up is a lot of things that interest us, we may not have the time, the money, or just generally the ability to be able to see it or play it for ourselves. I already said in my Danganronpa 1 video that these upcoming videos about the series are going to have spoilers in them, and I'll say it again here. I just want to make sure that, play the game or not, for whatever reason, you aren't left out from a full understanding and a full picture of everything that I'm discussing. And with that out of the way, let's go back to that magical bunny girl I mentioned. Somehow the game starts off with Usami here being the teacher chaperone of a school trip for the latest class of ultimates from Hope's Peak Academy. And instead of demanding death, she wants everybody to be friends with each other and a bit of a team-building getaway. So, hey, the school is still open and has a new class. Things must not have been as bad as the ending of the first game made it out to be. Unfortunately, Monokuma is still around, so after everyone finally gets over their confusion and settles down, things turn into the first game again. Escape by killing someone and not getting found out at the trial. And with the rules of the game established, let's meet the players.
My name is Hajime Hinata. There's only one reason I came to Hope's Peak Academy. Because I admired Hope's Peak Academy.
Hajime doesn't remember what his ultimate skill is, but unlike Kyoko's time with that idea in the first game, it's much more important to the story what Hajime does and doesn't remember about himself. Though it's established early on in this game, everyone lost their memories about their time at school, Hajime doesn't really understand how he got admitted to the academy in the first place. This opens his character up to be the everyman-style character the players control and have a viewpoint through, but at the same time he's presented as a more natural-feeling character than Makoto from before. He's much less prone to the poetic, meandering inner monologues that Makoto had, thank God, but still lets us share his emotions and confusion without feeling as if it's forced into our laps. He's just a plain kind of guy, even with how he dresses, but he still feels expressive about himself. That's a more personal opinion for me, to be sure, but be it the writing, voice acting, and or just a different setting with more interesting characters surrounding him, I do enjoy him a lot more. Also, Hajime and the others' reverence toward Hope's Peak Academy and Hope in general is something that this game explores a little more, which makes the school not just a setting, but also a major character in the story. Which means that yes, an institution is now a character.
Hey!
I'm Chiaki Nanami, the ultimate gamer. Video games are my hobby, and I'm a fan of all genres. Nice to meet you.
The ultimate gamer. She's the best at any game you can think of and plays so much she barely sleeps. She's also friendly toward everyone, if a little prone to stare off into space and lose her thoughts, and is one of the characters that likes to help prod Hajime into answering questions during the trials when everyone's a little lost. Now, the game uses all the characters' ultimate skills in the story to some capacity. In Chiaki's case, it's blatantly used when she talks Hajime through a video game that's hiding a clue. However, I also think her attentiveness to detail in games is translating fairly well to an attentiveness to detail in the trials. She has more than that going on with her, but we'll cover that down the road a bit. In the end, she has an innocence and purity of sorts about her, coupled with a determination to keep things sane and civil between the rest of the group.
My name is Sonia Nevermind.
The ultimate princess. She's a literal princess from a foreign kingdom that was accepted into Hope's Peak as a foreign exchange student. Her regal style, form, and way of speaking is clear to everyone, but throughout the game has plenty of moments showing hidden depths or surprising interests. She has a knowledge of military weapons, serial killers, dozens of languages, and random trivia about anime and Japanese entertainment that her entire country is apparently in love with. She's a little ditzy and confused on the surface, but in the end it's clear the foundation of that is coming from a different land and culture. When the situation calls for it, she shows why she has the adoration and respect of her subjects when her royal presence becomes a commanding one. However, she never stops treating everyone as an equal and a friend, and is happiest among them because she feels she can be open about herself without fear of having to keep up appearances or ceremony.
Yo, the name's Akane Owari. Nice to meet ya.
Akane is the ultimate gymnast, and a short description would be she's a combination of Aoi and Sakura from the previous game while also being her own character. She's hot-blooded and seems to bring up throwing down for a fight more than just gymnastics, but overall she's just a fun-loving girl that wants to constantly be at physical perfection. Also, to eat a lot. Come to think of it, she kind of fits the bill for a female version of Goku. She's a character that helps keep levity in the story as it unfolds, but even then her personality, stubbornness, and constant training are involved with a couple discoveries during investigations, as well as the cause of a major event in the story. Out of everyone, she feels like the story barely, if at all, uses her ultimate skill in a direct manner. However, her ultimate skill is a major catalyst and link between her and Nekomaru, which is how both of those characters display a lot of their personal growth and depth.
I'm Hiyoko Sayanji.
The ultimate brat. Ultimate traditional dancer, who is a Class A brat and bully to nearly everyone. This is pretty much her entire characterization, but it seems to come more from her being childlike and immature more than fully malicious. Yes, she uses all that to her advantage to get away with her antics, but there's tiny flickers of her having an actual heart underneath everything. Tiny, though. She develops an actual friendship with Mahiru, and that in turn leads to some of her kinder moments, if only to one person and possibly selfish ones. But she still has it in for Mikan most of all. At least in the second trial, however, she has an honest reason to be spiteful toward everyone when she's accused of being the killer. And later she tries to create a legitimate shrine to their dead friends in the game. Her ultimate skill gets a moment to shine in the game when she performs on stage with Ibuki and Chiaki. At least to the characters, we still just see a single image. But the garments she wears and how she has to constantly deal with them do lead to her accidentally disrupting a nearly perfect murder scheme. In the end, though, her character gets slight development with hints it could have gotten better, but she ends up still more bratty, half-pint than matured.
You may call me Gundam Tanaka. Remember it well, for it is the name that will one day rule this world.
You can't have a Danganronpa game without someone loud and outrageous, and Gundam fits that bill perfectly. He's the ultimate breeder, able to tame, command, and raise nearly any kind of animal. I absolutely love him, with the way he boisterously talks about incredible feats of darkness and evil that wind up being mundane sessions with cute and fluffy critters. His dreaded 4 dark divas of destruction, for example, are actually 4 hamsters that are tucked away in his scarf and sleeves. They are legitimately skilled, though, and Gundam openly cares about the animals that he handles. But if this guy was competing at a dog show, it would be infinitely more watchable, with how his commands sound less like, "Fetch the stick, boy!" and more like he's summoning the flaming, damned souls of hell itself to empower a tiny, yappy dog jumping through a hoop. Honestly, however, the feats his hamsters perform during the game and some of his tricks, as well as the blatant scar and eye damage, hint that there's probably some truth to the admittedly awesome supernatural bluster that he gives. In the end, he's a character that clearly shows he cares for everyone else, and wraps up his good intentions with declarations of evil and darkness that never really veer into full-on edgelord territory. He knows he's playing up a character fully to the hilt, and it's enjoyable to witness it and often try to figure out the intentions he has behind his words.
Name's Kazuichi Soda. I'm the ultimate mechanic. Nice to meet ya.
Despite his punk and dangerous appearance, Kazuichi is actually a little cowardly and much more normal or grounded in characterization. He's the ultimate mechanic, and he has numerous times over the game that gets to come into play to help out. He's also a comic relief character, so expect him to get loud and exaggerated with his emotions very often. That said, I find him a more normal version of Yasuhiro from the previous games, since the things that Kazuichi gets worked up about are usually more understandable and relatable. He's not going to drag out a trial to find out if somebody's not a ghost. He has an eye for the female body, but when he's not distracted by his baser instincts, he has moments of not just intelligence, but also schemes and plans to try to help the others stay safe or friendly. Be they finding a way to cut open a coconut and share the juice inside it with the others, or trying to find a way to crash a girls-only beach party. He's clearly a guy with a good heart inside a body with typical teenager thoughts.
Let's see. I'm Mahiro Koizumi. I'll be counting on you from now on.
I already mentioned her as being a kind of big sis friend to Hiyoko, but she also comes off as a fairly assertive teen mom toward the others as well. She's the ultimate photographer and loves doing her thing. Her pictures come in handy for at least one trial, and her character is a major aspect of events that raise parts of the game's story to the heights they reach. She's more collected than the others in terms of personality, but she's still not afraid to speak her mind and try to get across her points and statements as bluntly as she can. We'll be revisiting her a little bit as the video goes on, so let's see who's next for now.
My name is Teru Hanamura. On the streets, I'm known as the ultimate cook.
The ultimate cook, or chef if he convinces you to call him that. He's incredibly talented with all kinds of food and dishes, and he is always eager to be in the kitchen and have a chance to show off his skills. He's also just as eager to show off how perverted he is, and he's more blatant and open about it than Haifumi in the previous game. However, in my opinion, while I know a guy being creepy like this isn't as funny to some of you out there, the blatantness of it combined with others constantly calling him out on it, as well as being friendly and otherwise decent to everyone, helps soften it into being more legitimate as a comedic characterization. Alongside that, when things go very wrong for him in the game, there is a little tragedy and pity that can be felt for him. Once again, his skill is put to use plenty of times, and even his perverted nature becomes an important clue in the first trial.
I'm Nagito Komaeda. Nice to meet you.
Oh boy, am I going to enjoy talking about this guy. One of the more important characters in the game, and even in the overall setting as a whole. He's the ultimate lucky student. And I don't mean like Makoto, where he just won a raffle ticket to get into the school. I mean, honest to God, blessed by the fates, monkey paw style luck. He gets both good and bad, in mostly equal measure, usually closely following each other to keep things balanced. For instance, his acceptance into Hope's Peak came about the same time as finding out he had 2 terminal diseases. And Nagito knows this about himself, so it's no wonder he's a little crazy. As I said, no more holding back on spoilers, but I'll discuss more about that aspect later. For now, understand that Nagito worships ultimate talent and the ground the other students walk on due to his devout fervor for hope. And yes, at times in the game, Nagito effectively weaponizes his luck, even though he keeps telling everyone his ultimate skill is worthless. Though I suppose with all he's been through, he'd be more than happy to be rid of it. In the end, you could say he's a dark reflection of Makoto's character from the first game, and that includes having the same voice actor as Makoto in both the English and Japanese cast. Honestly, there's plenty of times the voice work for him comes off really great. He isn't the only time in this game, however, that what seem to be positive or enjoyable aspects of the first game are given a deeper look, and we can find out more about unintended or even intended darker sides to it all. Just know that by the end of this video, you'll most likely understand why he's one of the most well-regarded characters in the franchise.
I am the Ultimate Team Manager, Nekomaru Nidai!
The Ultimate Team Manager. If you get this guy as your coach, he'll put your team through hell, but definitely get you a winning season. Despite appearances, he's actually held back a little by a heart condition, but his determination and training keeps it at bay. Most of the time in the game, he comes off as trying to keep things upbeat and positive for the others, even willing to put himself in harm's way. Again, he became fast friends with Akane, and while he dedicates himself as everyone's coach on the island, he takes a more direct and professional interest in her. He also loves to fight and spar as much as she does, and neither of them go easy on each other when practicing. Neither of them would have it any other way, though. Again, his connection with Akane leads to an important moment in the game's story, but even after that, his dedication to being an inspiration and drive for the others leads to an even bigger moment for them and his character.
Ibuki Miyota! Put it together and what do you get? Ibuki Miyota!
Another fun character in the game, and definitely the peppiest. She's friendly, outgoing, and the ultimate musician. She has a couple moments to play her guitar in the game, but also shows off at one point her exceptional hearing, which I assume good and trained hearing is related to musical skill. Her tendency of zany outbursts also helps lead some of the trials in unexpected but ultimately helpful directions. It could be said her outlandish and wacky personality might be a one-trick pony, but it is used in very effective ways to either bring lightheartedness to the story or just shake things up a little to keep things from being too dark at times.
My name is Peko Pekoyama. It is nice to meet you too.
A stern face among the crowd. Peko is the ultimate swordsman and is professional with herself to a fault. It's expected a character like this would be the sourpuss of the group, but in actuality, she doesn't seem to mind the others around her and has moments of feeling at ease enough to open up her feelings toward the others. She's not above joining the other girls and trying to bake and share desserts from a cookbook. That said, we'll be revisiting her as well since there are major revelations about her that change the way the story and characters interact.
My name is Mikan Sumiki. From the bottom of my heart, I hope we can get along.
A shy, shrinking violet klutz that has a habit of thinking everybody hates her, and somehow always tripping in ways that land in embarrassing and degrading poses. She's the ultimate nurse, and she feels that taking care of others is the only time she feels like she has power over others. Outside of that, though, she's convinced herself she only gets attention from others by repeatedly humiliating herself. Hiyoko's savage bullying of her and everyone else's lack of really controlling it doesn't do her any favors either, but in the end she has plenty of moments she feels at ease enough around them that she gets to feel some happiness and acceptance. She's also a lot smarter than she gives herself credit for, and her medical abilities come into play very often. She also gives a peek at the biggest twist in the game before any of the other characters are involved in it.
Name's Fuyuhiko Kuzuryu. Just so we're clear, I don't plan to act friendly and shit with you guys.
What a mouth on that guy.
One of my favorite characters in the franchise, and possibly one of the biggest reasons this game is so wonderful for what it is. He's the ultimate Yakuza, and he is not one of the friendly types. He constantly pushes everyone else away, doesn't want to be a part of anything, or at least admit he wants to be, and constantly threatens to kill people for doing things like just talking to him when he's walking around. He's a more violent and dangerous version of Byakuya from the first game, but his character development is done so much better. Naturally, this means we'll come back to him as well later on, but understand that Fuyuhiko and his interactions with the others through the game are probably the standout example of excellent writing.
My name is Byakuya Togami.
Speaking of the ultimate affluent prodigy, here he is! And apparently he's been celebrating his survival of the last game at some buffets. His personality is mostly the same as the last game, except when the killing game starts this time, he declares it's his responsibility as the best among them to ensure everyone's safety, instead of declaring he'll win the game on his own. So apparently he did have some maturing while he was away, though he doesn't recognize the situation they're in, nor Monokuma for that matter. Our magical bunny girl teacher. She starts off as Usami and spends the entire game trying to promote friendship and love, even when all things are going to hell under Monokuma. And when the evil bear does show up, he brutally takes control of the school trip from her and rebuilds her as Monami, his self-labeled little sister. Even then, she still tries to be a positive influence to the students as a clear foil in contrast to Monokuma, but she herself has a few secrets to hide. She's fully aware of the truth of everything going on, both before and after Monokuma arrives. And there's plenty of hints that what she knows is damaging to the students she's hiding it from. This gives us not just a goody two-shoes, but a character that is presenting an honestly happy, cheerful personality to everyone that doubles as a way to distract them from the mysteries and truths that she doesn't want them to know. For instance, Usami is the one that took everyone's memories away, even before anything with Monokuma started. It creates a dynamic where even though everyone knows she's against the killings of Monokuma, they're still suspicious of whatever it is she's involved with. Still evil, still wants to see everyone kill each other, still darkly hilarious. In an odd way, he feels like he's more comical in this game than before, and I think that ties to the existence of Monami. He has giant robots to guard the island, but his greatest weapon is still his manipulative statements in nature. A lot of the time he openly tells the truth, being the one to say right out of the gate that everyone's memories are stolen, as well as some choice info about who's in charge of all the mess going on this time. And a lot of hints we're given through the game imply that he's taking advantage of what's really going on, instead of being the direct cause of it all. However, because in this game he has someone he can play off of more directly than just the students, he does get a chance to show a more sadistic and dangerous streak than what he could in the first game. So, once more, an interesting and unique cast of characters. What else is new in the sequel? Most of the gameplay changes or additions were made to the trials. A simple but big one was the ability to now agree with certain statements, instead of just refuting all of them, and a new way to debate using swords to literally cut through someone's arguments. Hangman's Gambit was changed as well. Unfortunately, it got a lot more complicated than I think it needed to be, so this is going to be one of my few criticisms about the game. Instead of just shooting the letters to spell out the word or words, now you need to use a different button to pick up a letter, match it to a copy of the letter, then shoot it to put it into the word. It gets just as time-consuming as the last game if letters you need aren't showing up, but this time you can lose them to a game of alphabet bumper cars. And yes, I've had times when letters hit each other as they spawn in from the sides of the screen before I can even see them to react. I would have preferred this one stayed like it was previously. It was much simpler for what it was trying to do, and in the end it doesn't change how the minigame actually works. It just adds a bunch of extra steps to do the same thing as before. Also, this is a good time to point out that in this game the difficulty is higher than the first game. And what I mean by that is, in the first game, the first trial typically only gave you one bullet to use during the debates, and Hangman's Gambit, for a while, would have a couple letters filled in. In this game, you have multiple bullets right from the get-go, and when you get around to having Hangman's Gambit again, no letters are filled in. So there's a lot more emphasis in this game for you, the player, to figure things out more often. And speaking of that, what I think is the best addition to the game is the Logic Dive minigame. When Hajime begins to puzzle over things, it's interpreted as surfing down a digital lane, dodging obstacles and not falling off while trying to take the path to the right answers. It really makes it feel like a string of thoughts are coming together. You pick the wrong answer, you fall off and go again. Even if you just randomly pick answers, it's like each mistake is Hajime thinking, "No, that doesn't feel right," or something doesn't add up with that train of thought. The fact it's actually fun to play doesn't hurt at all either. And again, like the first game, you can save at any time during the trial if you need to take a break, or just pick a safe place to come back to if things aren't going your way. And taking a break is probably what you'll use it for most often. The game is longer than the first one, with the prologue taking about 2 or more hours before Monokuma shows up and the first chapter begins, if you have auto advance active for the text boxes like I did. I complained about how long it took in the first game to get the ball rolling, but in this game I have the opposite feeling. Instead of everyone locked in a room staring at the ceiling tiles when they introduce each other, it's a wide open tropical island setting. The time given to the characters allows them to react and comment on the various things about the island as well as themselves. In fact, some of them are already on board with having fun, even after Monokuma's appearance. The game takes time to flesh out the characters and setting in nearly all scenes, and even Monokuma has a little more freedom in how he acts in this game. I guess the way I can try to put it is, it's like going on a 1-hour trip down the road and all you see is fields or forests or something like that, versus a 2 or 3 hour road trip where you've got towns, sights to see, scenic routes. It felt less boring for the 3 hours in this game to start versus the 1 hour of the first game to start. Speaking of driving, spoilers. It's time for all the fun story, explanation, and analysis, and there is plenty to explore a little deeper in this game, especially with how elements connect with each other to build and strengthen the story and presentation. Bringing up Byakuya again, things progress to a point where he decides the best way to get everyone to get along and not try to kill each other is to host a dinner party. It works out pretty well, but just to be extra safe, he pats down everyone, locks away dangerous items, and removes dangerous decorations from the food. So, anyone out there that's seen horror movie sequels want to take a guess at what happens to the returning character from the first game? Anyone? You're right, but you're wrong. In both this game and the first game, the first trial is meant to give us the don't trust anybody, anything can happen kind of situation. And in both of these games, it involves the original attacker having things turned around on them. In this case, however, it builds and moves forward the story more than just unexpected character is the killer, don't trust anyone. Nagito, and this won't be the last we discuss him, reveals in the trial that he is such a deranged believer in hope that he'd push despair onto others to create, in his words, an even bigger hope. To that end, he planned a murder he then bragged about to the person that killed Byakuya. And in case you're wondering, yes, Nagito was planning to actually get killed for what he believed in. However, Byakuya caught on to what was happening in the middle of everything going on and tried to protect Nagito, essentially taking the bullet instead. And the killer? Teru, who would have simply protected the others by warning them, if not for the fact he realized he could get away and get back to his sick, ailing mother that was running their family business on her own. And while there's a sense of pity toward him, Teru's last words are an honest realization of what the entire situation did to him.
I think I'm the one who went crazy.
So yeah, that was the opening chapter in this game, and like I said, there's a lot of things that happen in it that have reverberations and influence to things that happen further along in the storyline as well. For instance, Nagito may not have been the killer, but he was obviously dangerous. So Nekomaru and Kazuichi tie him up and lock him in a building when nobody's looking. So with that all set up as the first chapter, let's get to the second one, which is one that's probably one of the most memorable for a lot of fans of the series. It starts with Monami setting the pattern of her somehow being able to defeat one of the giant robot monsters Monokuma put around the island. And this is actually a minigame you can play from the main menu of the game. And while I am moving past a lot of the stuff that happens in the story for time reasons, understand that there's a lot of moments between the murders and stuff that helps give personality to all the characters in the game and liven up the setting. For instance, poking around the library lets you discover Sonya's deep interest in the occult, or the storyline progressing because Kazuichi wanted to get himself invited to the girls' beach party. That said, the next murder is Mahiru, and at the trial the evidence points to Hyoko. Since they were friends, this makes the brat go understandably ballistic. It can be argued that this is also a reason why she doesn't become much friendlier toward the others, since in the trial they have to keep pushing into her testimonies to be able to prove her innocence. Which then leads to the true culprit and the events that make this chapter memorable. So I'm going to try to explain this efficiently and hopefully not confusingly. Among the memories that were taken was that during their school years, Fuyuhiko killed a girl that had killed his little sister. The girl he killed was a friend of Mahiru's, and Mahiru apparently had some connection with the murder of Fuyuhiko's little sister. Of course, Monokuma sets up a way for Fuyuhiko to discover all this, so Fuyuhiko sets up a meeting with Mahiru to try to figure out whether or not she actually had anything to do with the whole mess, and what she has to say for herself. In his own words, Fuyuhiko didn't want to kill her, but when Mahiru began confronting him over his killing of her friend, he got angry and started to reach for a weapon. But suddenly, Peko is and always has been the ultimate swordswoman because she is and always has been Fuyuhiko's bodyguard, trained and assigned to him since birth. To this end, she's been convinced that she's no human, but just a tool. And when she saw Fuyuhiko go for the weapon, she decided it was her duty to attack and kill Mahiru for him. And to fulfill her duty to protect her young master, she makes sure she takes the fall during the trial, thinking it would mean his escape. Until everyone points out the obvious, that she's still human, Fuyuhiko makes it clear this isn't what he wanted from her at all, and I'll just let this part play so you can see it for yourself real quick.
I never needed a tool. So... you didn't need to become a tool.
Let's give it everything we've got!
You just needed to be yourself. I never wanted a tool. I just wanted you. Only you.
Young master?
Why? Why couldn't you understand? We've always been together ever since we were kids!
Let's go! It's punishment time!
Please, Peko. Don't go! I need you! Don't leave me!
Young master? Young master?
And that's why I like to bring up the voice acting sometimes, because, especially in this game, that scene could have worked with just the text on it and everything, but I feel that everybody in the game was able to give depth and characterization and feeling to the people they were voicing. And in his desperation to save Peko from her fate, Fuyuhiko actually barges into the execution and tries to stop it. And from this point on in the game, Fuyuhiko is a changed man. In Chapter 3, he offers a sincere apology to the others, which they only realize is sincere from him when they discover he cut his stomach open for seppuku, the ritual of honorable suicide. For the rest of his time in the game after this, Fuyuhiko never forgets what he caused, and repeatedly says it's not his life to live anymore, but now partly Peko's as well. And because of that, he becomes one of the most proactive allies of the group, and devotes himself to putting an end to the killings and escaping the island. Not just for Peko, but to also honor Mahiru as well. And it's really hard to tell that if he was more honest with Peko, and she stopped him from attacking instead of killing for him, would his character have developed this much, or would he still have some amount of standoffishness? So after all that, how could anybody want to kill anybody else in this game now? Well, somehow everyone gets sick. And while Mikan is taking care of the afflicted and everyone else quarantines, something seems familiar. No, that wasn't like a joke or anything about current events. I mean, Mikan actually gets something called the remembering disease. And spurred on by how nobody in the group really treated her with respect or kept her from being bullied, she kills for who she says is the only person that loved her and forgave her for being how she was. And she would have gotten away with it too, if Hiyoko didn't have to go find a bigger mirror so she could tie her kimono sash properly. a minor thing that's linked to her ultimate ability, but still a way to be able to use it in the story in a big way. But that feels like cheating, right? After all, we had so much going on in the first 2 chapters, but this plot twist feels weak, maybe even forced. Of course, it's not that simple, but it doesn't connect fully until the final chapter. And now we get to chapter 4, and unfortunately I'm going to have to say this is a really weak one. To the point that when they did a stage play adaptation of this video game, they effectively removed the entire thing. Yes, Japan has stage plays of video games. I'm currently aware that there's also 1 or 2 Resident Evil stage plays. Broadway's nerdy out there. Coming back to the actual game, though, Akane is so tired of all the crap going on that she actually tries to fight Monokuma. In retaliation, Monokuma fires a bazooka at her, but it's intercepted by Nekomaru to protect her. And because of some rules lawyering by the students, Monokuma saves his life by turning him into a robot. This is fantastical, crazy, and somehow right at home in a Danganronpa game. So as is typical for the game, you spend time exploring the island that was unlocked for the chapter. However, instead of the island at large being used as the setting, Monokuma locks everyone in a funhouse with no food or water. And of course they'll only get out if someone kills, using the prizes to be found in an escape room challenge available to them. Which, to be honest, doesn't feel like Monokuma's typical scheming and manipulative characterization we've come to expect from him by now. At least with Mikan's disease, she still had agency and choice over what she did. At this point, Monokuma might as well just put them on a sinking boat with the exit sealed. So yeah, not only do we get what's more or less a boring and, quite frankly, visually annoying location that's a stark contrast to the rest of the game, but it goes from mystery game to an escape room diversion. Now, when events pick up again with another murder occurring, Nagito takes it upon himself to investigate the escape room and discovers the prizes within it. And his discoveries have consequences for the rest of the game. Starting here, Nagito stops preaching hope as much and suddenly becomes more antagonistic toward the others, Hajime in particular. Turns out, Hajime never had a talent. He was a reserve corps student. In short, his family paid top dollar to get a normal education at Hope's Peak so the academy could get more money for their coffers. And after all those revelations, it's time to enter the trial and discover the truth of the murder. And this time, it's not something that sets up character development, but more like character depth. It turns out the murder of Nekomaru was done by Gundam. Both of them fought to the death in order to save the rest of their friends from starvation. And Gundam openly cites Hajime's words of giving up as his reasons for doing so. How'd he beat a robot, though? He uses hamsters to hit an off button on Nekomaru's body during the fight, which made him helpless. Again, having an ultimate skill actually means something in the story. And Gundam's execution is probably one of the most heartwarming moments you can find in the series. And for all that I had to say about Chapter 4 being overall empty and boring before the murder and trial, it might have been a calm moment included to precede the storm about to come. Nagito is getting more unhinged and openly threatening about uncovering a traitor among the group. Monami, trying to dodge questions, leads to it becoming very believable when Monokuma says there's a traitor among them. And by now in the story, Monokuma has kept bringing up an organization called the Future Foundation, and from her reactions each time it's brought up around her, Monami is working for them somehow. There's no enemy of my enemy in this situation. The group has reason to distrust both of the plushies. With all this going on, it's decided that Nagito needs to be tied up again, if only to have one less thing to worry about. Unfortunately, Nagito has always shown himself to be a smart cookie during the trials, and he came prepared.
This game of self-righteous hypocrisy ends now! And to do that, I will destroy Jabberwock Island!
Yes, he's going to blow up the island and kill everyone unless the traitor reveals himself. When they finally do find the explosives, it turns out to be a distraction while a fire breaks out nearby. And after they put out the fire using extinguisher grenade bottles, they find a badly mutilated Nagito. And once more, the revelations in the trial are where things get interesting. Nagito caused his own death, but it wasn't suicide. When I said earlier he was aware of his luck, this is the point in time in the game where he literally weaponizes it. He put a poison in one of the fire grenades and staged everything so that when the bottle burst open, the poison killed him but made it look like he was tortured to death. Why? Because he was counting on his luck to make it so that the person who threw the grenade was the traitor. But, as pointed out, he made it impossible to find out who the traitor would be unless they spoke up before they made the wrong choice. So, in order to save their friends, Chiaki announces she's the mole from the Future Foundation, and was the one that apparently threw the grenade that killed Nagito with the poison. And take a moment at this point in time to recognize that out of the 5 murders so far, 4 of them have had a culprit that believes almost properly that they were doing the right thing, or whoever they did it to was deserving of it. Targeting somebody who already admitted they were planning a murder, trying to fulfill your duty and your master's will, trying to save everybody's life, and now trying to make sure the villain dies. So that just leaves Mikan's twisted, selfish motive. And while we don't have the full story on her motive yet, there's still more about this one. Monokuma clears up that because even the traitor wouldn't have known if they threw the grenade, Nagito's real goal was to get everyone else but the traitor killed. And his reasons for that are uncovered in the final chapter. There's a lot of hints, clues, and revelations given in the final chapter leading up to the final trial, much like in the previous game. And at this point it becomes clear this is a full sequel to the prior game, building off the story and events as well as confirming things that were left a mystery. Things such as the world having been destroyed by worldwide riots caused by the previous game's villain. And the reason things look pretty good on the island is because this place is a virtual reality program that the students have been trapped in. It's also around this time that the previous game's mastermind returns as an AI virus that was uploaded into the program. With her eyes on finishing the job of destroying the world with the spread of despair, Junko Enoshima makes a hell of a return. And now that she's an AI computer program, if she isn't stopped here, there will be nothing stopping her from spreading throughout the world. So, after all that, how does all this connect to the students? Because the virtual reality program that they're inside of is a literal rehabilitation program that's meant to undo something that occurred to them in the past. And what was that thing that happened in the past? Let's link up the truth that Nagito discovered with Mikan regaining her memories. Why would Nagito, who venerated hope above all else, want to try to kill everybody? Why did Mikan start acting so differently when she regained her memories? How could Junko have destroyed the world if she didn't have help? Every last student in this game, aside from Chiaki, were among the first ones to fall to Junko's brainwashing and become ultimate despair. And these students were somehow found and captured by the Future Foundation after the events of the first game, and they had plans to execute them all, if it wasn't for the intervention of some certain other actors.
Chiyoko! Byakuya! I knew you guys would come!
That's not something you need to take your time saying.
Believe. Try putting yourself in.
Yes, we have the return of Makoto, Kyoko, and Byakuya. You find out earlier than this in the game that the big boy was actually the ultimate imposter, but it felt better to bring it up here. And if you think all this is good enough to make an interesting story, it gets better. As long as your name isn't Hajime Hinata.
Good news, Hajime! Even though you were mocked for being a reserve corps student, he had a talent all along! Ultimate hope!
Hajime actually does have an ultimate skill he doesn't know about, which came from an experiment he volunteered to enter in Hope's Peak. They put him into surgery and physically altered his mind and body into their version of Ultimate Hope. Izuru Kamakura. Someone with all the ultimate talents they could stuff into him. And then Junko got to him. According to this game, the tragedy at Hope's Peak that kickstarted the ultimate tragedy that destroyed the world was Izuru killing the entire student council at Hope's Peak. The third anime clarifies this more, but for time reasons the details aren't important. However, it did show Chiaki was a real friend everyone knew in the real world before this game. Junko used Chiaki's death in real life to help brainwash the class into becoming her followers. But even with them, Junko wouldn't have gotten as far as she did without discovering and manipulating Izuru. The person Hajime Hinata can't remember being is the reason the world fell to disaster and his friends became villains they can't remember being. And the only way to prevent Junko's AI from uploading into the bodies of their now brain-dead friends and spreading her despair even more is if they shut down the program and restore their personalities as the worst villains in the world, most likely leading to them being hunted down and killed. Once again, I'll let you see for yourself how this affects the characters.
I can't do it.
Huh? Can't do it?
I can't choose. You guys are telling us the world's going to be destroyed unless we sacrifice ourselves. And that, I can't decide. I can't choose either one.
Hajime!
Shut up! Leave me alone! This is just too much. Why do I have to be a part of this? I mean, I'm different from the rest of you. And I don't even have a talent. But even so, I got dragged into this. And now, my existence is going to disappear? I don't understand it at all.
Both choices are hopeless.
How much of ourselves do we have to sacrifice?
This burden, don't you dare make us shoulder it.
There's no way we can handle this on our own.
Everyone, get a hold of yourselves.
It's impossible! For someone like me, it's impossible. I can't choose the future! Hope, despair, do whatever you want. It's not my problem!
That's...
And once again, I'm going to give major props to the voice actors. They sink into despair and Hajime crawls into a fantasy where everyone is still alive and happy together. And it's actually an interesting sequence to give one last moment with the other characters in the game, especially in a halfway positive memory. The Ultimate Imposter even drops character, and in one line of dialogue we get a chance to hear who he really was. But with help from Chiaki's memory, Hajime begins to fight back. And unlike the first game where you simply used gameplay to inspire the others, in this game you used gameplay to fight back against Izuru inside Hajime's own mind, and build back the will to push forward against Junko. You saved yourself, and in so doing, the others are inspired to save themselves. In their decisions, we come to the main theme the game is based around, and a moment that feels we can actually take inspiration from the message as well. No matter how much despair we feel or how much hope we have, in the end we have to trust in what we can do for the future, be it for ourselves or others. The students shut down the game and destroy the last of Junko and Ishima. They find that not only do they remember the events of the game, but Hajime has become dominant over the Izuru personality while still keeping all of the ultimate skills. The group stays behind with her comatose friends to find a way to heal them, but in the end, ultimate despair is no more. The previous characters head back to the Future Foundation, preparing to face the music for their disobedience, when Byakuya is reminded there's one more survivor from their class that is waiting for him. This game was incredible, for a lot of the same reasons as the first one, with the story, art, presentation, music, things such as that, but it also eliminated my biggest complaint about the first game by ensuring everybody's unique ability or unique talent in this game actually had something to do with the story and how things occurred, be it in big or small ways. And aside from Hangman's Gambit, I feel that the changes and additions to gameplay were overall positive. And while a lot of what I discussed with the characters and story were the more serious story elements, there are a ton of funny and outright hilarious moments. Even when things are most serious during the final trial, Junko herself brings a levity to how things are discovered, and much like the Joker has his dark humor. There's 2 more games left, and the inherent problem of following up a good story, game, performance, etc. is if and how you follow it up. Do you build on it and try to continue what everyone is used to? Or do you try something different but recognizable? So when I get back to talking about this series, I'll be discussing the 3rd game in the main trilogy, and how it approached all this, and how well it did. So until next time, I always enjoy seeing your comments and responding to them, and I love seeing newcomers. So, like, share, subscribe, but most importantly, you take care.
Just one last time, let me say something that makes me sound like a teacher. There's no need to be a hero. You don't have to force yourself just to make people acknowledge you. When you do that, you end up blaming yourself, blaming other people, and feeling jealous of everyone. But still, it doesn't have to be like that. Even if people don't acknowledge you, you just have to be someone that you can be proud of. 'Cause you yourself are your biggest supporter. If you can learn to love yourself, that love will continue to support you for the rest of your life. Love, love.